Easter would be the destination, and the destination is full of joy. We think of Easter as new life, resurrection, victory. And all those things are true, and all those things are exciting, except that we need to remember that the journey to Easter, especially when we look at Jesus' journey to Easter, and that's what we'll be doing for the next couple of weeks, is we'll be looking at the end of the Gospel of Luke, chapters 22 and 23 and 24. And we're going to see that the journey to Easter is full of pain and suffering and strife and hardship. And so if we're going to join Jesus, if we want what is at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, if we're looking for the life and the joy and the victory and the happiness and the new life, then we need to be able to accept that we're also going to have the pain and the suffering and the difficulties. But there's a thing that I heard 25 years ago, and it stuck with me, so I hope it stuck. Now, I think one of the reasons it stuck with me, because the preacher that preached it said it about 16 times through his lesson. I'm not going to do that, but it was essentially this. You are either going through a storm right now. Like we all have storms in our lives. So you're either going through a storm right now, or you just came out of a storm, or there's a storm coming. This is life, right? This is the reality of what we're dealing with. Is you're either right now, you're sitting here and you're like, my life is a mess. Like things, I don't know how I'm going to make it till tomorrow, or I don't know how things are going to work. I'm confused, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm lost, I'm in pain, I'm struggling. That is me right now. Or you can look back and see, I am glad that's over. Or you're sitting here comfortable and be like, that's not me at all. And it's not to give you a case of anxiety, like it's coming, you know. But we just know, like our lives are just not going to be skating through easy street. So you're either in a storm now, or you just got through one, or there's a storm coming. That's 4, I think. We're almost there to 16. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through, today we're going to focus on chapter 22 of the Gospel of Luke. So if you want to turn there, I would encourage that, because I will be reading some from Luke, and I'm not going to have the cheat sheet on the screens. Okay, so I didn't put all the verses on there. So I'd encourage you to grab your Bible, Luke 22, pull it up on your phone, and we can look through it together. But the thing about suffering, and when we get to that time in our life where we're going through something, we're often surprised by suffering. Maybe not that the storm came, because we thought, the storm was going to come. We knew that it was going to come. But sometimes that surprises us, just the fact that now it's here. We're like, I wasn't expecting it to be this, or I didn't think it was going to be at this time, whatever that might be. But what we're going to talk about with these surprising things is that when we are actually in those times of difficulty, the times of struggle, when you're the person that's in that situation, we're often surprised by the people around us. We're often surprised by how things unfold. And it's just kind of human nature, because we all have just kind of a basic egocentrism about us, right? Like the world is about me. And as selfless as I want to be, it's hard to not make things about me, especially if I'm hurting. Because if I'm hurting, my expectation is you all can recognize, like you see that I'm hurting. And when you see someone who's hurting, you would help, right? And so what we're going to see is humans are not that great, and we're going to learn that from Jesus. So in chapter 22, I'm going to start reading from verse 7, the Last Supper. Now the festival of unleavened bread arrived when the Passover lamb is sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John ahead, saying, "Go and prepare the Passover meal so we can eat it together." "Where do you want us to prepare it?" they asked him. He replied, "As soon as you enter Jerusalem, A man carrying a pitcher of water will meet you. Follow him. At the house he enters, say to the owner, the teacher asks, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover meal with my disciples? He will take you upstairs to a large room that is already set up. That is where you should prepare a meal. They went off to the city, found everything just as Jesus said, and prepared the Passover meal there. When came time, Jesus and the apostles sat down together at the table. Jesus said, I have been very eager to eat this Passover meal with you before my suffering begins. For I tell you now that I won't eat this meal again until the meaning is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. So Jesus, right in the beginning, he's sharing a meal with them, and he's letting them know, this is it. Like, he had told them previously, I'm going to Jerusalem to die. He had told them previously that he was going to come to Jerusalem and that it wasn't going to be good. He was going to be arrested. He was going to be tortured. And he was going to be killed. And in those times, it tells us that the disciples either didn't believe him or they didn't understand it, what he was talking about. And so here we are. We made it to Jerusalem. And he's saying, this is the beginning. I'm about to suffer. All right, so we're in verse 16. That was verse 16. Verse 17, then he took a cup of wine and gave thanks to God for it. And he said, take this cup and share it among yourselves, for I will not drink wine until the kingdom of God has come. And he took some bread and gave thanks to God for it. And he broke it in pieces and gave it to the disciples, saying, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. After supper, he took another cup of wine, saying, this cup is the new covenant between God and his people, an agreement confirmed with my blood, which is poured out as a sacrifice for you. He's speaking an analogy, but at some points, as dense as the apostles seemed, this should be very clear. He is letting the Passover lamb had just been sacrificed, and he is using all of this symbols and typology from the religion that they grew up in, and he's saying this now is, and he's going to get in, and this is my body. This is my body, and this is my blood. I am the sacrifice that's being made. I am going to suffer and die. No bones about it. Verse 21. But here at this table, sitting among us as a friend, he tells them, this is Jesus speaking, here at this table, sitting among us as a friend, is a man who will betray me. For it has been determined that the Son of Man must die, but what sorrow awaits one who betrays him. And so, of course, when the disciples hear this, they're very Jesus-focused. Here's the man that we love, that we've been following, our teacher, our rabbi, and he just told us he's going to die, and he's going to suffer. And so all of them are thinking, Lord, we feel so bad for you because you're going to do this. No, that's not what happens. In verse 24, it says, then they began to argue amongst themselves, not who would be the one who betrayed Jesus. They're not even like, well, man, who's this friend that's going to... It says, then they began to argue among themselves about who would be the greatest among them. It's just a... Can you imagine? You're Jesus. You know you're about to get beat until you're bloody and raw. You're going to be hanged on a cross, and you're going to die for these men. And when you're pouring out your heart to them, really making it clear about what's going to happen, they start to bicker with one another about which one of them is the best apostle. Jesus told them, in this world the kings and great men lord it over their people, yet they are called friends of the people. But among you it will be different. Those who are greatest among you should take the lowest rank, and the leader should be like a servant. Who is more important, the one who sits at the table or the one who serves? The one who sits at the table, of course, but not here. For I am among you as one who serves. You have stayed with me in my time of trial. And just as my Father has granted me a kingdom, I now grant you the right to eat and drink at my table in the kingdom, and you will sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Simon, Simon, Satan is asked to sift each of you like wheat, and I have pleaded in prayer for you, Simon, that your faith should not fail. So when you have repented and turned to me again, strengthen your brothers. Peter said, Lord, I'm not ready to go to prison with you. Peter said, Lord, I am ready. I'm ready to go to prison with you and even to die with you. But Jesus said, Peter, let me tell you something. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. Okay, I just want to pause there and make a couple of points here. One is, so these are kind of things that are surprising when we're suffering. We know them, and when we're not in the midst of suffering, it's just, we don't even really think about it, because when you're not suffering, usually we don't think about when we'll suffer. Like sometimes we prepare ourselves in little ways, but for the most part, it's not like a present thought. If it is, like you might want to talk to somebody about that. Like we shouldn't really be thinking about like when I suffer, right? All right. So the interesting thing is when we're in need, when we're the people that are in times of need, we often have to actually be the people that are comforters, right? You just get diagnosed with something and you share with your family. And there might be some like hugs and, oh, we'll pray for you or we feel for you. But typically, the person that has to bring that news then has to turn and comfort their family, right? Because they're a wreck. You've had some time to process it a little bit, but you might still be a wreck. But then you have to put your arms around them and say, I think it's going to be okay, right? And so this is surprising, like we expect that we would be comforted, but oftentimes when we're the person who's struggling, we need to be the comforter. We need to be the explainer, right? Jesus is, and that's what we saw here, when the disciples start to argue about who would be the greatest, Jesus has to switch modes. He's like, look, guys, this is not what it's about right now. Right? The reason I'm suffering I am not trying to lord it over you. My suffering is about my being a servant to you. That's the example. This is what it's all about. This is his form of kind of comfort and instruction, right? Like this is how you're supposed to act. Some people don't know what to do. When you are struggling, when you are suffering, like we don't need a show of hands. When you've been going through something hard, how many of us here have had someone say something really dumb to us? Like really insincere, really like, why would you even say that? But in their mind, it made sense for some reason, right? Or people don't know what to do. And when people don't know what to do, they put more responsibility on us. Hey, Rob, if there's anything you need, you just give me a call. And so now I'm like, do I need to cater to you now? Like, do I need to make you feel better by giving you something to do? And that's when we're suffering, that's the situation we're in. We have to help other people. The other thing is that people will let you down. People are selfish, right? We kind of established that. There's a selfishness that exists. And so I would say that even this, in verse 33, when Peter says, Lord, I'm ready to go to prison with you, I will even die with you, seems like an unselfish statement, but it's in fact a very selfish one. He's trying to make himself feel better. And he's making hollow promises to Jesus that we know he'll not keep. And this is what people do, right? I'll be there for you. I got your back. And sometimes, and I hope everybody can have some kind of naysaying comment in their head right now. Well, Rob, no, that's not true because I went through this and I had this person there. Thank God. But for the most part, people will abandon us because who wants to suffer with you? And so it's just a good thing. So Jesus says in verse 34 and following, but Jesus says, Peter, let me tell you something. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny me 3 times that you even know me. Then Jesus asked them, when I sent you out to preach the good news and you did not have money, a traveler's bag, or an extra pair of sandals, did you need anything? No, they replied. But now, he said, take your money and a traveler's bag, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one, for the time has come for this prophecy about me to be fulfilled. He was counted among rebels. Yes, everything written about me by the prophets will come true. And so there's this understanding that Jesus has And so, like, if we expect the world when we're struggling to just come to us and cater to us and bow down to us and fulfill our every need and take care of all, then we're going to be in for a rude awakening. And I'm not saying that we need to be like really pessimistic and like, woe is me. Like, well, I know if I'm suffering, no one's really going to be there for me. But Jesus had to know that. Jesus knew that. He knew the hearts of men. And so he's going into this knowing this is going to be the most difficult time of my life. And yet the same 12 guys that I need to have my back, I know one is going to stab me in the back, one is going to deny that he ever knew me, and all the other ones are going to scatter. And while they're with me, instead of trying to comfort me or pray with me or do things like that with me, they're going to argue with each other about which one of them has been the best servant of mine, has been the best student of mine. And so having that kind of knowledge going into suffering, I think will help us suffer well. I think Jesus suffered well. So then he asked this question, because he had sent them out in the past, and they had everything they needed. And he told them, don't take all of these, don't take anything. God's going to prepare for you. But now this is a different situation. In verse 36, he says, take your money in your traveler's bag, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. At the end of that, in verse 38, it says, they say, look, Lord, they replied, we have 2 swords among us. That's enough, he said. And it's hard to tell if the that's enough is like that's 2 swords is enough, or if this is kind of like where we might say in modern times, like, all right, that's enough of that talk. Because the truth is, Jesus is trying to prepare them not for a physical battle, but for a spiritual one. The text continues in verse 39. Then, accompanied by the disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went as usual to the Mount of Olives, where he told them, pray that you will not give in to temptation. He walked away about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. I just want to pause there and kind of, this is the last point of the kind of surprising things about suffering, like that the tables are going to turn and we're going to need to be the comforter, the explainer to the people that aren't suffering. And that's not maybe the position that we desire, but it's the position we'll end up being in. And then secondly, is that for the most part, people will abandon us. Maybe not wholly abandon us, but they're not really going to be there like we need them to be there. Or not really kind of help us like we really desire them to help us. And then the last thing that we need to really know is, as physical as the suffering and the struggle might seem, there is always a root and connectedness in the spiritual world. And so Jesus, just getting off this idea of saying, I told, when you went on this commission earlier, you didn't bring anything and God provided. The time right now is going to be so tough, you should sell that stuff and go get some swords. And I don't think he's talking about getting into a fight, because later, in just a little bit, Peter cuts a dude's ear off and Jesus stops him. It's like, cut this out, and then puts the ear back on, right? And so he is not preparing them for a physical war. He is preparing them for a spiritual war. He's saying whatever was tough then, it's going to be 100 times worse now. And God is not going to protect you the way that you were protected on that commission. It's just going to be tougher. And he's trying to prepare them for that. But we have a puzzle here, okay? We have a puzzle because Jesus in Luke chapter 22 and verse 42 says, Father, if you're willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. And so it's tough because in John chapter 12, Jesus says, he's just told his disciples that he's going to die, he has to die. And he says that my soul is deeply troubled. Should I pray, Father, save me from this hour? But this is the reason I came. Instead, Father, bring glory to your name. And so Jesus is telling us, according to the Gospel of John, he's not going to be praying to be saved from the hour. He's not going to be praying to be saved from death. Instead, he's going to pray that glory will be brought to God's name. And so then in Hebrews, and this has got to be talking about this situation, says, while Jesus was here on earth, he offered prayers and pleadings with loud cries and tears to the one who would rescue him from death. And God heard his prayers because of his deep reverence for God. So what does that mean? And in some versions we'll even talk about, and God heard and answered the prayers. So you've got Jesus who's praying, take this cup of suffering away from me. And God who is answering that prayer, hearing that prayer, but Jesus is not saying, save me from death. And so what exactly is happening, and how is God answering this prayer? And the answer is the next verse in Luke chapter 22. It says this, then an angel from heaven appeared and strengthened him. Strengthen him physically? Probably. There's an aspect of that, but we've got an angel from heaven coming to do the strengthening. It reminds us of some Old Testament stories when, people were physically ruined. They had just traveled miles and miles and hadn't eaten for days, and so an angel comes and gives them food. But also, their mental state was that they sat there, Elijah, we're talking about Elijah, and prayed to God, just take my life. I don't even want to live anymore. And so there is a physical strengthening that's accompanied by a spiritual strengthening. The food is not just food, it's representative of help. And so here is Jesus now all alone in this world. His disciples can't even stay awake to pray for him. And God gives him strength through an angel. He prayed more fervently, it says, and he was in such agony of spirit that his sweat fell to the ground like drops of blood. At last he stood up again and returned to the disciples, only to find them asleep, exhausted from grief. Why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so that you will not give in to temptation. The chapter continues, and we have a little bit more insight about that spiritual nature about things. Because it's Peter who had the sword. Peter then is in this situation. In verses 47 through 53, where Jesus is arrested. And then in 54, we have Peter denying Jesus. So they arrested him, led him to the high priest's home, and Peter followed at a distance. The guards lit a fire in the middle of the court, and around it, the servant girl noticed him in the firelight and began, this is about Peter, staring at him. And finally, this is one of Jesus' followers. Peter denied it. Right? And so this happens a couple more times. And then it says in verse 61, at the moment the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Suddenly the Lord's word flashed through Peter's mind. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. And Peter left the courtyard weeping bitterly. And so for Peter, with his sword, why did he not fight in the courtyard? Why did he not pull that thing out? Why did he not see that as a time to start ripping through guards and cutting through people and saving Jesus? And there's a recognition is that the battle that Jesus was calling him to fight, the battle that he ended up losing this part of, was not a physical one, but a spiritual one. And so there's so much temptation. There's so much temptation that comes with that, is that if you're dealing with something that is physical, right? If you've been diagnosed with a disease, if you've got some kind of chronic illness or pain, that it's all about that, right? And the solution is then physical. Go to the doctor, get the medicine. And I'm not saying to avoid that stuff. I'm just saying to recognize in your suffering, there will always be a spiritual dimension, right? I'm not saying that because God did not save Jesus from death. He did not even take away the suffering, but he sent an angel to strengthen him. We have the example of the Apostle Paul later on, who prays a couple of different times for God to remove from him a thorn of flesh. That was his physical suffering. And God's answer to Paul was, my grace is enough for you. My grace is sufficient. And so I'm not saying to not pray about the physical things or to not get the physical help that we might have offered in this world. But just to know that the answer might be that you'll never have that depression taken away. You'll never have the anxiety removed from you. You'll never have the chronic back pain leave. You'll never beat cancer. That could be the answer. The reality is, it's not just about our physical lives in the physical world. And so in our suffering, we need to know that people will betray us, that we'll have to comfort the people that should be comforting us, and that there is always a spiritual thing that's happening. And so the call to action is to pray about it. And that's what Jesus did. And when Jesus was left all alone and really had all of this suffering that had already happened, the emotional things and and he knew what was happening, the only way he could prepare for that was through prayer. So whether you're in a storm now, you should be praying. Not just for the physical relief or mental relief, but for spiritual insight, for strength from the Lord. Or, if you've just got through a storm, pray that God will show you the spiritual victory, the spiritual answer, what could be accomplished through that. Or if there's a storm coming, that God will prepare you for that storm that's coming through prayer. Now, each of these weeks, we're going to have somebody come up and share a testimony, and that mirrors what we learned in the lesson and how that went. And so today, my wonderful wife is going to speak for a couple of minutes about some of her life.
It's easy for me to get up and be goofy and silly in front of very hard. So bear with me. So prayer has been a huge part of my life, probably from very early. You start at like a toddler when you're praying before a meal or at bedtime. For me, probably at 7 or 8, there were many. I started with some storms in my life, and I remember there were times when I went to God, and it was so easy to go to him and cry out. I remember at night, that was kind of like my time when I felt like I was alone and could be myself with him. And he answered in big ways and showed up. And that was awesome. There was one area in my life, in instances and storms that happened, that for some reason I just didn't go to him. I don't know what exactly. I look back years and years now, like, what was it about that one thing that I just couldn't feel like I couldn't go to God about? And so for years, I was able to push it aside or endure it for those years. And as I got older, kind of push it aside or ignore it or really forget about it. And then God, who is the amazing God he is, blessed me with 4 children, and they're all amazing, a son, and then 3 daughters. I think he has a sense of humor because I was such a tomboy growing up, and I thought I'd have all boys. And then he gave me 3 girls who are beautiful and lovely in their own way. But as I grew older, actually last year, I hit a point. They got to a certain age, and all of a sudden, when this happens in your life, sometimes you have those little triggers, and I saw all the joy that they brought me, but I also remembered certain times and things that I went through in my life, looking at these little girls and looking at them grow and the things that they might face. And that is when all of those things that I'd kind of pushed aside, those experiences, the instances, the storms, came to the surface and were like right in my face, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. So I started to turn to prayer. So that's what I would share with you now. A few ways that, first, going to people can be amazing. Church, we have brothers and sisters. I have great friends that are always pointing me to Christ, but they're human. So when my brain is all jumbled and things seemed impossible in this situation, like that there wasn't an answer, going to humans can help, especially the ones that point you to Christ, but they are also jumbled and they don't know how to help in those situations. So I started to pour out. So one way is just in the moments, like the little prayers, when the little things come to the surface, and you do those like little quick prayers that help you get through the moments, but also finding, for myself, I know one instance of just finding a literal mountain to climb. So going out, driving to the base of a mountain, climbing to the top, getting on the edge of the mountain, and I just had a journal and a pen in my hand, because sometimes for me, there are times that I cannot speak in words the things that I need to say. But writing helps. So just praying to God and writing that out. Another day I humbled myself. So this is part of the testimony, is like, humbled myself and really accepted help for someone to take my children so I could lock myself in a room and pray for hours. It's the kind of prayer that I started on my knees, and then I was literally on the floor, and then get up in the chair, and I grabbed a notebook, and all the things that are so jumbled in my brain started to pour out, and you just write and write and write and write if you've had that time. And everything just seems so clear because God shows up in a big way, because the things that you seem to you impossible, all of a sudden with God are not impossible. And so all the things that kind of start to come clear in your head when you go to God for those things. But the biggest thing is just realizing, I think, in my life this year and in my past years, all the things that for me in my life, this one in particular, that on the surface look to be very non-spiritual, and on the surface seem like things you can handle on your own. And then you realize it is all spiritual, that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, right? It's against the powers and the principles, the authorities of the spiritual realms. And so taking the time to really just, we say, call it as it is. It's a spiritual battle every day, the things that we face. And so turning to humans can do so much to help and encourage you, but first God first, and that in my life has been the biggest help in my spiritual journey, is just realizing it's a spiritual battle, that every single thing in my life has been a spiritual battle, and to turn to God for that.
Would you pray for your love and your kindness and your faithfulness? Lord, there's so many people here this morning that walked in with smiles on their face and looking pretty and looking handsome and looking good, Lord, but inside are all torn up. And we can't tell. We can't tell when people are suffering. And most of the time we are just thinking about ourselves and what's going on in our own lives and our own worlds. And so I pray that you will have mercy on us, Lord, and help us as a church to be different and to overcome those little bits of selfishness that grab at us all the time. And especially this morning and the next several weeks, so just a culture, Lord, that we can develop and maintain here, where we are others focused and really looking to see what's going on in the lives of the people around us, Lord, so that we won't be that we can be the comforters, and that we don't need to be comforted when we're not suffering, and that we won't abandon those who are our family, that are our family because of you. And God, most of all, I pray that we can be strengthened by your Spirit, Lord, by your powers, that we can come to you whenever we have need, whenever we're struggling or suffering, Lord, for the smallest things and the things that we can feel the permission and know the permission that you care about us and love us so much, Lord, knowing every single hair on our head, that we can cry out to you in anguish, that we can pour our spirits out to you, that we can entrust you with all of those things. And so, Lord, I pray for whoever needs that strength this morning, that you'll provide. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.